I really only cruise on Royal Caribbean, but what are some of the cruises I would actually consider going on that are not on Royal Caribbean? I'm asked this question a lot, especially like when a new ship debuts or a new concept comes out on another line about would I consider going on other cruise lines? And the answer is maybe. But today I wanted to share the type of cruises that I really would consider and would never consider and share which of these really do stand out as intriguing. Number one, would I ever go on a Carnival cruise ship? And this might surprise people because, Carnival is like Royal Caribbean's chief competitor in a lot of ways, but also because Carnival is very polarizing in many aspects. But the answer is yes, but I'd really be tempted to go on one of their newer ships. I have no desire to go on their old ships, like they used to call it the purple carpet ships. But if you were to go on one of the Excel class ships, Mardi Gras, Jubilee, Celebration, I actually wouldn't mind doing this. I've actually teased this idea in the past. I think it'd be kind of interesting, and I'd be kind of intrigued to see what is the best that Carnival has and how does it compare to Royal Caribbean in that way. When I hear from readers and YouTube viewers who are going on a brand new cruise ship for a different line, I often tell people, listen, at the end of the day, it's hard to go wrong with a brand new cruise ship. When you have a ship that's debuted in the last couple of years, it's like a new car. They don't break down that often. They still smell good, and they have that kind of, everything's going well motif to it. So if I'm considering a new Carnival ship, I have less trepidation about being on a brand new cruise ship than maybe the stereotypical one. And so for that reason, I would actually consider going on a brand new Carnival cruise ship. Number two, would I ever consider going on a river cruise? Now, this is interesting because a river cruise, I would have told you about, a couple of months ago. The answer is absolutely not. River cruises have a reputation of being popular among people that are at least like 65 years old or older. No offense to anybody who's that age. It's just that it seems like I'm not anywhere near that age bracket to have that kind of appeal to it. I mean, obviously, river cruise ships are small. They don't offer nearly as much as cruise ships. But a lot of times people lump in river cruises with ocean-going cruises because of, the word cruise. But the reality is the experience is notably different. That being said, I really did have my eyes opened to the possibility of a river cruise with Celebrity announcing their new river cruise ships coming out in 2027. Celebrity recently announced earlier this year that they're going to launch a new division offering river cruise ships, and they'll have about a fleet of 10 to start with that'll be launching in the next couple of years. And this has me now thinking about this type of travel for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, Celebrity, being, of course, the sister company to Royal Caribbean, is going to infuse some aspect of their DNA to the onboard experience. I mean, it's still going to be a river cruise ship. It's not going to be like an Edge class ship on the water in the Rhine. But at the same time, I feel like Royal Caribbean Group is going to bring sort of a different direction in the same way that, when Disney, where Virgin Voyages entered the market, they brought their take on it. And so for that reason, I'm intrigued. Number two, I already have high status with Celebrity Cruises thanks to status matching, which if you haven't done yet is absolutely amazing. Royal Caribbean now has full status matching between Celebrity, Silver Sea, and Royal Caribbean. So that really means you can get your status from Royal Caribbean applied to other lines. And so for the virtue of the fact that I'm already a Zenith member in Celebrity's Captain's Club, which is the uppermost limit, basically I'll be going on these river cruises, and I'm going to assume that the Captain's Club applies here. I'll have some status of some kind with some benefits to go with it. And then, of course, I really do think there's some truth to the idea that when you have a company you're familiar with, like Celebrity, it makes it easier of a transition to be able to enjoy that product. So would I want to do a river cruise on Ama or Viking? Probably not, or at least not unless it really works out super easy for me to get there. But in the case of Celebrity, yes, absolutely. At number three, it's a cruise line I mentioned earlier in this video, and that's Virgin Voyages. A lot of people talk to me about Virgin. They ask, Matt, would you ever consider doing one? In fact, I've seen a lot of my contemporaries here on YouTube, whether it's Eat Sleep Cruise or Cruise Habit or Emma Cruises, trying out Virgin Voyages. So would I ever want to try Virgin? The answer is, honestly, no. The problem I have with Virgin Voyages is they seem too cool for school. They've come into the whole market with we're not a cruise line, man. And they kind of backed away from that a little bit with some of the changes they had to make initially with their first ship. But the thing that I still don't love about Virgin is just that they just seem a little too hip. You're still a cruise ship. It's still a cruise experience. But their whole approach to how cruising is, we're not the classic cruise line, but they got so far over to that side that it just doesn't interest me at all. I'll also admit that the fact they're adults only is actually a turnoff for me. Not that I have to cruise with my kids. I cruise without my kids from time to time. That doesn't bother me. But the whole adults only thing with no kids allowed on here, I don't know. I don't love that whole idea. It's not that, again, I want to bring my kids with me. It speaks to me that it has almost a certain attitude towards it. And this is not, no offense to anybody out there that wants a cruise without kids or certainly loves Virgin Voyages. I'm just sharing my own opinion on why I'm just not interested in it. Because ultimately, while I do think there are some interesting aspects of the cruise line, every cruise line has like something they do that I think they do well. Like I love the balconies on Virgin Voyages because they have those hammocks, which do look absolutely amazing. But they just seem a little too cool for school for me. And I'm not that hip, I'm not that cool, and I don't need kind of that over the top, we're trying to be this like anti-cruise line. I don't know, just something about it doesn't work for me. Now, how about Margaritaville at Sea, which is one of the cheapest cruise lines out there? Oftentimes, you can get like a $99 fare on this line. They actually offer free cruises for veterans out there, which is absolutely amazing. But they are very much a low budget, ultra low cost cruise line that's out there. And once again, if we had been doing this video about 6 months ago, or even less than that, I probably would have said, no way, this just seems a little too low frills for me. I'm not all about the luxury or anything like that, but it just seemed like it was a bridge too far. That being said, our staff over at Cruise Blog, which is our sister channel, has spent a lot more time focusing on Margaritaville at Sea, especially their new Islander ship, which is their newer of their ships. Of course, none of the ships are actually new. They're older ships that have been acquired from other lines. But Margaritaville at Sea has done a lot to really shed its old moniker. Before it was Margaritaville at Sea, it was Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line, which was absolutely one of the worst cruise lines out there. It was super cheap, and that was the best thing you could say about it. But Margaritaville has really spent a lot of time and effort to try to amend a lot of this and improve things and really blend budget with value and try to make it a little more appealing. Anyway, the Islander experience on that ship, which hails from Tampa, has really opened my eyes to the possibilities from it. With Royal Caribbean cruise prices obviously going up and up and up, I would say intrigued to try this out because it's so cheap. I really want to see how it compares. Like, I'm more interested to see at that price, what do you get versus how does that compare to Royal Caribbean? Obviously, with Royal Caribbean, there's going to be certain amenities and things to do on board that are not going to exist on Margaritaville. But again, this goes back to like, if I can pay a third of what I'm going to pay on Royal Caribbean, what does that get me truly? And where does the compromise come into it? I'm not willing to compromise everything on my family vacation, but I am interested to see where that line is between good value and that's too much missing. Next on my list is a world cruise, and as many of you are aware, Royal Caribbean just completed its first world cruise ever with Serenade of the Seas last year, and they've teased there will be a new world cruise coming up in the next couple of years. So would I ever consider doing a world cruise? And the answer is no. I'll be honest with you. I mean, the idea is really cool, and I would love to at some day, maybe some point in the future, my wife and I sail on a cruise ship around the world. It does sound amazing. I'm not denying that. But I've often said that I don't want to live on a cruise ship. I don't want to cruise in perpetuity. Like for me, I love going on a cruise, being home for like 4 to 6 weeks, and then going on another ship. I like being home because it makes the experience, the novelty of being on a cruise ship appeal that much more. I mean, I love the cruise experience and I love the cruise life, but I think you need to have a contrast to that. You need to have a reason to be at home and to yearn for it because, as they say, distance makes the heart grow fonder. I think that's true of cruises as well because ultimately, having separation from a cruise, not being on a cruise, makes me want to get back on board more. Without a doubt, some of the places the world cruise goes to, especially the more exotic locales, would be incredible to visit. And that's the appeal of a world cruise. But I just think it's too long, it's too much time away, and I just don't know that I can spend that much time on any ship, let alone, obviously a smaller ship, because let's face it, it's not going to be Icon of the Seas, it's going to be doing a world cruise. It's going to be a, quote-unquote smaller ship. I also had on my list, would I ever consider a luxury cruise? When you're talking about luxury cruise, you're talking about like Silver Sea, you're talking about Seabourn, you're talking about that elite level, like a ship that's less than 1,000 passengers, has its own butler. And, what's interesting about this is I've done a lot of suites on Royal Caribbean, a lot of expensive suites on Royal Caribbean. The Ultimate Family Suite, the Royal Loft Suite, Star Class suites of all kinds, and I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on these suites. So if I'm spending that much money on a Royal Caribbean experience, what would a luxury cruise experience be? And so the answer is maybe would be my best answer as to would I want to do a luxury cruise? I don't have a yearning for it. Like, I have more interest in doing a Carnival cruise over a luxury cruise simply because luxury, again, just doesn't speak to me as much. Not that a Carnival cruise speaks to me that much, but you know what I mean? It's a little more similar to my Royal Caribbean cruising experience. But I'm also freely admitting that I don't know what I don't know. And in a lot of cases, if I've learned anything about cruising over the years, is you can't judge a book by its cover. It's hard to really look at something you see in the marketing material and not realize that the onboard experience can be very different from that. With a luxury cruise, I'm certainly intrigued and curious as to what you get, but the jury's out whether or not I really want it. I'm not saying no, I'm not saying hard yes, just curious about it. And then lastly, a transatlantic cruise, which is one of the most common sailings that Royal Caribbean offers that I've never done actually. I mean, Panama Canal I haven't done, I'd love to do Panama Canal. But a transatlantic is one of those like deep cuts, if you will. If this were like Sirius XM radio, this would be like deep tracks. This is like the kind of cruise that only really big hardcore cruisers tend to really love. And I haven't done it yet. Not that I'm not a big hardcore cruiser, it's just that it seems, again, like a different type of experience. Once again, similar to the World Cruise, it's also very long sailing. Usually, transatlantic sailings are at least 12 to 14 nights. And this isn't on the same scale as World Cruise by any means, but really, the problems with the transatlantic are twofold. One, there are a lot of sea days in a row. Two, the weather can really either make a transatlantic peaceful, relaxing, or I can't believe it feels like the Poseidon Adventure because there's so much seasickness and motion in the ocean. I think the answer is yes, I do want to do a transatlantic cruise at some point. However, I would definitely pick a transatlantic that has a lot of ports with it. Not necessarily in the middle, there's no way around it. When you cross the Atlantic, there's nowhere to stop. But there are transatlantic cruises that have a lot of ports either in Europe or in North America. And if you can balance that out a little bit more as opposed to some of the transatlantics, which are like, one stop in Europe, one stop at Coco Key, and that's it, I'd be willing to do that. So there are the cruises I would and would not consider going on. And I'm sure this video will come back to bite me when I go on one of these. Someone says, Matt, you said you'd never do this one. But truthfully, this is how I feel about it at this very minute. Let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts? Give me your review of these takes. Which of these lines and types of sailings would you want to do? And what are the ones you absolutely have no interest in doing? Let me know in the comments below. While you're down below our video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on your notifications. That way, YouTube lets you know of a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.